right. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you guys. Thanks for being here. I didn't know how many people would actually be here today, so I totally blamed you if you were gone. But I'm glad you're here, and we'll make the best of this last day before fall break. So I'm sure we're all eager to go. Let's turn to the Gospel according to St. Matthew on page 291, and I would like you to keep in mind what we've talked about, that is the idea of four different really important schools of Jewish thought that Jesus is coming into. He's born into a divided Hebraicism. And so he's going to have to navigate those various schools in what he does during the 3+ years of his ministry. But a number of things are going to be asked about Christ, about Jesus himself during this time period. And these are things that I don't necessarily have answers to, but I want us to think about. So probably, and we do have an orthodox answer to all of these, but they're still really difficult questions historically. So one of the things that many of the people of the time and in the early church asked was this question about what is the nature of Christ? That is, how do we figure out what kind of being Jesus is? So is he fully man? Is he fully God? Is he something in between? Is he fully man and fully God, which will be the orthodox answer? Or is he some kind of angelic being or a prophet? Right? Those are all the questions that people are asking about him and trying to figure out what his nature is. This is why I wanted us to start with the Gospel of John when we talked about this on Monday, because there we do get the orthodox answer that he's fully man and fully God at the same time, which is a mystery. It's an absolute mystery to us. We believe the orthodox answer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we understand what that orthodox answer is. So the other questions that are not surprising are what happens at the Last Supper. Now, this is a huge question for people in the early church. What exactly happens in the Last Supper when Jesus says, "This is my body"? Right? At that point, do we take it allegorically? Do we take it symbolically? Do we take it literally? And that was a question as well at the beginning of Jesus's ministry, well, at the end of Jesus's ministry with the Last Supper and what was going on and his declaration of that. And you'll remember, if you know your scripture well, you'll remember that at the moment Jesus says, "This is my body," there are all kinds of disciples who walk away from him saying this is too hard of a teaching. So from the very beginning, this was a difficult thing for Christians to try and understand and to get their mind around. We can say that from almost the beginning of the church, people did believe in the real presence of his body and blood. It wasn't really one of those things that they took as symbolic until much later in Christianity. But then there's this other thing, and I would say a third question that needs to be asked, and one that I would suggest that no Christians have ever answered exactly, and that is, what's the relationship between faith and works? What is that relationship? Are we saved by faith? Are we saved by faith and works being a demonstration of that? Where do works fit in? Because it's very clear that during Jesus's ministry, he believes that good works really matter. So we know how important they are, but we don't know how important they are in terms of eternal salvation. And so the orthodox answer for that would be that we are saved by faith, but more or less sanctified by works. That'll be the kind of typical answer that Christians would give at the time. But it's still a difficult question. How do we balance those two things? So here we have Jesus on page 291 in the longest speech in all of the New Testament. So this is the longest speech given in the New Testament. The second longest, interestingly enough, is Mary's response to Gabriel. So that would be the second most, but this is the longest by far, and it's much longer than Mary's answer to. But this is the longest speech we have, and it goes over 3 chapters, which is astounding, right? That we would have this much in the words of Jesus. This is the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew is very Greek, but he's also very Jewish as well. So there's going to be a blend of a lot of what's Jewish with a lot of what's Greek. And not surprisingly, for this Sermon on the Mount, probably we can say almost definitively, without quite being able to, that Jesus is speaking to a group of Pharisees. And that even if we were just betting men, which I wouldn't recommend, but even if we were, we could almost certainly bet if Jesus is talking to a group of Jews, 9 out of 10 times they're going to be Pharisees, because that's the main group of Jews. So we tend to think that. But it seems to be the case he's talking to the Pharisees, mostly because right at the beginning of this, he famously offers the Beatitudes, which are from Hillel, who's the most famous of the Pharisees. So it probably is that Jesus is addressing a group of Pharisees. But you wouldn't believe how many books have been written on these first few lines. So if we just look there on page 291, seeing the crowds, Jesus went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, there are books and books written on that passage that I just read to you, because the question is, when Jesus leaves the crowd and he goes up on the mountain, who follows him? And we don't know. We just don't know. The scripture doesn't tell us. Is it the whole crowd that follows him? Is it just his closest 12 who come with him? And the reason the question is so important is because when we look at everything he's going to say on the Sermon on the Mount, we're asking, is he speaking to all Christians, or is he speaking only to the people who will be clergy? That is, to those who are his direct agents in Christianity. And it does matter, right? If he's speaking to all Christians, these are very, very difficult teachings. If he's speaking just to his clergy, those who will be the clergy, the priests and the pastors and so forth, if he's just speaking to them, then we have kind of 2 rules, one for the clergy and one for Christianity. Again, the kind of orthodox answer is that he's speaking to all Christians here. And I think, again, if we were betting men, which I wouldn't recommend, but if we were, we would place our bets on the fact that Jesus is speaking to everyone here, rather than just to those who will administer the church. So anybody want to read from the Sermon on the Mount? Helen, please. Thank you. So go ahead and start where I left off there. Blessed are the poor.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so men persecuted the prophets who were before you.
All right, let's stop there for a second, Helen. I'm going to have you keep reading here. But let's look at those Beatitudes for a moment. And I'll just open this up to you guys. What do we see in the Beatitudes? Right, this whole set of teachings we call the Beatitudes right here. So what do we see in them? Do they make sense? Are they logical? How do we take them? So, Kaylin?
I think they kind of go against worldly expectations.
Yeah.
One who mourns doesn't I don't think their expectation is that God is with the lowly. That God is, especially with the lowly people, not with maybe the kind of the little bit self-righteous, religious
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really important that he is addressing the lowest of these people, not addressing, well, he is addressing the highest because he's warning them. And we'll see that here in the next passage that Helen reads. But it is pretty amazing that he's addressing the lowly among the Jews. And you can imagine, again, Judaism is a very developed culture with its own hierarchy. And Jesus is messing with that. And he's basically saying, maybe you guys need to rethink what you're doing here, not just in terms of your theology, but in terms of your actual social structure. And I don't want to go so far, and Kaylin, I don't think you're going so far, is to say Jesus is a revolutionary. But there's no doubt he is addressing the poor, and he's thinking about those that we wouldn't normally think about or address in the ancient world. So that's his audience here, or at least that's what he's trying to tell his audience. Helen?
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Like at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, don't they like marvel at him because he's speaking with authority or something like that?
Yeah.
It makes sense because he's not just saying self-evident things like, "Oh, blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall be comforted." It's like he's like, it doesn't naturally make sense, but because he's saying it is so.
Yeah.
He's like bringing a new.
Yeah.
That's not like the default.
And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth like I didn't with Kaylin either, but I would say this, right, trying to answer what you're getting at. It strikes me that everything he's saying is a paradox, right? It's not immediately true.
And because it's not immediately true, it makes sense that he would have to proclaim it. Because
Yeah.
people won't just naturally understand.
Right. It subverts, again, I think it subverts what's going on in terms of authority. And yet, remember, Hillel had already said these things. So these are already in Pharisaical teachings already. You guys know the difference. If we say Pharisaical, we just mean objectively, this is what a Pharisee said. If we say Pharisaical, we're mocking them. So so just be careful about the way you say that overall. I mean, you won't offend me, but you might offend others on that. Frederick?
I think that another thing that these Beatitudes are accomplishing is they're putting a sort of meat on the idea, the classical idea of the virtues, the seven virtues.
Yeah.
And they're kind of extending them, but they're also preparing the way for the three theological virtues to be integrated into the 10 that we see overall.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think so too. Absolutely. So we're paving the way for the virtues here. Absolutely. Good. Ava?
I just have two questions. One, on what grounds is Hillel making this claim to the king? Because when Jesus becomes incarnate, it changes everything just by nature of him becoming
Right.
flesh. And so he has the authority, obviously, to kind of take a lot of new or Old Testament understandings and habits and commands and kind of give them new life because he himself is God and is the commandments.
Yes.
And obviously they're so radical because the Jews have never seen anything like this before, and that's his role is to give them new life. So how is Hillel coming to these claims before Christianity?
I don't know. And again, I would put it this way. We've already seen numerous proto-Christian claims that are being made by various people. So whether it's Socrates or Cicero, and I think the same thing is happening with Hillel, that we already have these kind of proto-claims that are being made. And Hillel got there a generation before Jesus did. But Jesus is going to be, he's not only influenced by Hillel, but he's also taking it further. And we'll see that here in just a minute, because in just a moment, we're going to have this threat, this pretty serious threat. And then at the end of that, we're going to have this, okay, now let's look at the law, and what does that mean? And so Jesus is going to take it much farther than the Pharisees had at that point. Go ahead, Ava.
So another question, if Hillel is very recent and very well known, how come Jesus never invokes his authority in their context? How come he's never okay, well, I am truth, so whatever I say is true, obviously. But also, in addition to what I'm saying, you don't even only have to take my word for it. One of you has come before me and made all of these claims.
Sure.
And still been lifted up in your eyes.
Yeah, I think, so remember, our idea of citing someone for authority, that's brand new, Right? It's very modern in the world that I might appeal to Jefferson or something. So in the ancient world, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. And the fact that Jesus is quoting so directly from Hillel, his audience would have known. They all would have known, oh, this is Hillel's teaching at this point. So he doesn't need to cite his authority right there. Now, if it were Moses, he would need to. But for just another teacher like Hillel, he wouldn't have to for that, if that makes sense, Ava. So, Miriam?
I don't quite have this specifically formulated, but so Hillel was a teacher?
Rabbi. Yeah, he had been a rabbi.
So, were these things because obviously the Jews they had the law.
Right.
They would, follow the law. And I've always read this as, because he says, I've not come to abolish the law.
Right, he'll say that here in just a moment.
Right?
Yep.
So I always read this as this is a fulfillment of their law. Because
Right.
their law was so, legalistic and rigid in certain ways.
Agreed.
It became more about the heart and choosing to follow Christ.
Yeah.
But, how would the Jews have, quote unquote, followed this or interpreted this before Christ?
Well, that's an open question, and I do think Jesus is going to radically change that. So Miriam, your question's really good. Let's hold off on it for just another 5 minutes, and I think it'll be obvious here in just a moment if we finish the passage. But it's a very good question. So, Frederick?
Do any of the early church fathers talk about Hillel as a type of Christ, or is there any reference made?
No, he's not a type of Christ, but he is definitely a prominent Pharisee. So in the same way, if and you guys wouldn't know this, but my generation would. If, for example, I started quoting John Paul II, almost anyone my age would know. I wouldn't even have to say John Paul II. You guys would be a little bit different. I would need to say, oh, that was the 3 popes ago saying something like that. But that's what Jesus is doing here by basically talking to these people. He's invoking someone from just the previous generation. So that it's not, Hillel would never have as high a position as some of the other figures we're talking about. But he was the greatest teacher of his day, of the greatest Jewish teacher of his day. Good. Okay, Helen, keep going. Do you mind?
You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trodden underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hid. Nor do men light a lamp and put it under a bushel, but on a stand, and it gives light to all the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Think not that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth have passed away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Whoever then relaxes one of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But he who does them and teaches them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.
All right, let's stop there again. Helen, thank you. So notice what he's doing here. So let's get to Miriam's point. Look at what he's saying about the law. And remember, the Pharisees and the Sadducees are all about the law. The law only matters if it is fulfilled by the heart, not just by the actions of the body. And we're going to see that here in just a moment. So if I look at my brother with hatred, I have committed murder. If I look at a woman with lust, I have committed adultery. And so I may brag, I've never killed anyone, and I've certainly never committed adultery. But if we think about this, and we think about, well, what has the heart done? Have I ever been so mad at somebody that I wish them dead? Well, I'm not going to tell you, but maybe. Have I ever looked at a woman and found her really attractive besides my wife? Well, maybe. So, those are the kinds of things that at that point, have we violated the 10 Commandments? So, no, I, Brad, have never literally violated the law. But have I done so in my own conscience? Yeah, maybe. And that's what Jesus is getting at here. And Miriam, does that make, I think that's what you were saying. But that's what he's doing here. He's basically telling us it's not enough to only not do this thing. You have to believe it as well, right? It has to be a part of you. So these are really hard teachings. And I'm guaranteeing you guys, you all in your lifetime will be so mad at somebody that you'll wish ill on them. And I'm not saying that's good. It's obviously very bad. But it's also very normal to do that. And chances are good you will find somebody attractive during your lifetime. The chances are really good that will happen. So those are the kinds of things that Jesus is warning us about. All right, what are you going to do when that happens? How are you going to make amends? And so again, we can sit there and have 600 laws and we can follow them, but we're not really following them because we don't believe them. Miriam?
Was this the part that was radical to the Jews? Like, especially in comparison with Hillel, with the Beatitudes? Because did Hillel teach that, like, things came from the heart? Or was that...
I don't know. I don't know enough about Hillel, and we don't have enough of his writings. So I'm not sure if we're still... I can tell you for certain that when Jesus is quoting the Beatitudes, that's Hillel. At this point, I think he's gone beyond Hillel now that he's talking about the law. I think now we're basically only in specifically Jesus's teaching, I think. So, okay, what else did you guys notice about a threat in this? Right, so think about this. I'm sure we've all seen a kind of precious moments image of Jesus. You know, he loves us. We know that. And no question about that. He loves us. But this isn't that Jesus that we're getting here. This is kind of ticked off Jesus in the way that he's presenting himself. And so how do we see that? Think about what he says about salt. What are we? What's he say about us? Frederick?
I think, making this an allegory for the Christian life, if we lose our distinctive character, if we lose what distinguishes us from those around us and makes us worthy to be called his followers, we're better to be thrown out and trampled underfoot than to continue to retain that identity.
This is horrifying, guys. Think about what's happened. We have already been given our flavor. We're salt. We already have a savor to us. But if we've lost that, what are we? We're no better than being dirt trampled upon. That's all we become. This is not happy, loving Jesus, right? He is, don't get me wrong. But this is a very, very serious Jesus in the way he presents this. And this is not easy to do. This is not easy to live out in any way. And so I think, and I'll put it this way, I think Jesus is basically saying, and Miriam, I want to go back to your point again, I think he's basically saying it's not enough that you live the law. You have to believe the law. But it's not even enough to believe the law. You have to carry the cross. I think this is what he's telling us from the very beginning, that you have to be willing to sacrifice yourself. And, you know, I tell you guys, I was deeply, deeply affected by that Minnesota shooting a few weeks ago. And yet I love that two of those kids at that shooting threw themselves on their best friends. They're doing something I don't know if I would have had the courage to do, but they are doing they are giving themselves up for their friends at age 10 and 12. They have attained a true Christianity in a way that I don't think I have. And that's astounding to me. And as horrible as that shooting was, there's real beauty that came out of that. When you imagine those kids that did that, that's incredible. And I think, again, I may be wrong, but I think that's what Jesus is preparing us here for. He's basically saying, look, if you take this life up, this is not easy at all. And it's not just about following laws. It's more than that. And no, I haven't come to abolish the law. I've come to fulfill it. But I think he's demanding even more than that in what he's getting at. And of course, look at what he does. He gets up on the cross and he dies. So it's not like he's preaching one thing and doing another. He is absolutely going to live that out and die that out, right, in every way. So it is a profound, profound teaching. But think about this as well. We talk about a city upon a hill as a good thing. But can't you imagine it's also a terrifying thing? Every single thing you do as a Christian will be watched. Every single action you take will be judged. And we won't just judge you, we're going to judge all of Christianity by what you do. So being a city upon a hill is beautiful. It's also deeply troubling because it means that we have to live an exemplary life. And so it's both a blessing and a burden at the same time. So that's why I stress, I love Jesus's rhetorical style, don't get me wrong. But to go from these kind of neat, nice, almost refrigerator magnet sayings of the Beatitudes to, by the way, if you're salt and you've lost your savor, I'm going to walk all over you. That is pretty tough right there. And you can imagine these people in the audience, they're getting whiplash as they're listening to this. And so Jesus starts them off gentle, but then he goes for the jugular, right away. He's doing that, and he's serious about this. So, Helen.
Isn't that like the famous Puritan sermon, Model of Christian Charity? Isn't the whole point of this youth city on a hill not like, well, America's so great, we'll never fail? It's like, guys, if we fail, everyone's going to see it.
That's exactly right. And Winthrop gets that right? And I love Ronald Reagan. He's one of my favorite presidents. But I don't think Reagan got that right. And he kept saying, oh, we're a shining city upon a hill. And he meant it like, look what God gave us. This is awesome. And Winthrop saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to do this, right? And so I think it's two very different things. Yeah, and you guys I love Reagan. Reagan was fantastic. But, I think he may have been wrong on that one. So, okay, good. All right, Helen, you want to keep reading? You doing okay reading? Okay.
You have heard that it was said of men of old, you shall not kill, and whoever kills shall be liable to judgment.
Bless you.
But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother shall be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, shall be liable to the hell of fire. If you are offering a gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Make friends quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out till you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. It is better that you should lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the grounds of unchastity, makes her an adulteress, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to the men of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your hand, for you cannot make one white, by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. And let what you say simply be yes or no. Anything more than that comes from evil. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist one who is evil. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your coat, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to him who begs from you, and do not refuse him who would borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you salute only your brethren, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? You, therefore, must be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's break this down. We've got to be really careful about perfect here. When Jesus says be perfect, perfect in the ancient world did not mean without flaw. It meant that you had attained your purpose. That's what perfection means. So don't think of this as Jesus saying you without sin. You should be without sin, but of course we'll never attain that in this world. Yeah, that's not our lot. But we can reach what we are meant to be. We can become the best Paul that we were made to be. And that's what Jesus is saying here. To be perfect as our Father is perfect. That is, to become that thing that we are meant to become. But we've already talked a little bit about the sins and the law. We know that it's not enough merely to obey the law. We also have to believe in the law. And we see here what murder is. We see what adultery is. We see what a false swearing is. The teaching on divorce is very difficult. Very difficult. I'm 27 years in a marriage, and I've been really blessed. We've had, I kid you not, we have had less than 10 disagreements in 27 years. I'm so blessed by that. But I know people who've been divorced too. And it's hard. It's really hard on all parties. And it's not one of those things that people generally go lightly into. And so I've not had to experience that, but I've certainly experienced it through my friends. And these are tough things. These are really tough. How do you end a marriage? What does it mean? What does it do for the children? What does it do for the spouses? Now, those are very, very hard things. And then we get to this moment, and we all should kind of just sigh with relief when we get to the bottom there of page 292. What do we do when we encounter evil? We turn the other cheek. We submit to it. We don't submit to the evil. We submit to the suffering that goes with the evil, right? And so, of course, Jesus is already anticipating the cross in what he's doing here. But if a poor man begs for your cloak, give it to him, right? If you need to walk a mile with some robber, walk 2 miles with him. Those are, again, very tough teachings, and yet they satisfy in so many ways our very longings from the ancient world. So, what happens if we all give a tooth for a tooth? We need dentures, right? What happens if we give an eye for an eye? We're blind. And so Jesus he's brilliant about this. It's like, okay, that's the old rule. But the new rule is never, ever do evil. Ever. Never, ever succumb to it in any way, right? Just don't even be tempted by it. Walk away from it as quickly as you can, but do good. So do help the poor. And that, you guys remember 30 minutes ago, one of our great questions, what is the relationship of faith and works? Well, you definitely have to have faith, but it seems pretty clear that you have to do good works too. So there's no clean separation of those things in the way that we often try to make it in the modern world. They somehow are mysteriously aligned one with another. So, Helen.
So thinking about the Socratic ethic that Plato records in
Sure.
like, under no circumstances is it right to do evil. Should one do evil?
Even when evil is done to one.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if some of the teachings that Jesus is like introducing here on the Sermon on the Mount actually have surfaced in history beforehand, like how does that affect Jesus' authority? Especially, I mean, like we know that he's God, but like the these people that were hearing him for the first time probably didn't know that he was God.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're starting to suspect, right? That's a big part of the story. They're starting to suspect this, trying to figure this out. At this point in the gospel, Jesus has not declared himself. He will here in just a moment. I mean, in just the next few lines, he's going to talk about his Father, but he hasn't quite done that yet. And I think it's one of those things. This is how I put it, Helen. When I see someone like Socrates making a Christian statement 400 years too early, that to me only makes God's majesty greater, in the sense that God has already planned this out. And within culture, he has already laid the groundwork. He's planted the seeds for what Christianity is to become. Because imagine if Jesus came and everything he said was brand new that no one had ever heard before. The chances are good people in mass would simply even more than they did. They would walk away from him. And I want you, think about this. I mean, this is astounding to me. Think about the Sadducee that we talked about the other day, who comes up to Jesus. Jesus convinces him of the truth. And then when Jesus says, by the way, give everything up and follow me, he can't do it. Right? You and I, we have never met Jesus. We're not going to meet Jesus in this world, right? I'm excluding communion for a moment. But I mean, to actually have a face-to-face like that person did, imagine how much harder it is for us to accept Jesus who have never met him versus that Sadducee who had 5 minutes with him. I mean, wouldn't you give a lot to have 5 minutes with Jesus? It'd be incredible, right? Just absolutely incredible. So even these people who knew him and felt his charisma walked away from him, right? Which is just stunning. So here's what I'm trying to get at, Helen. And I'm sorry, I'm doing this in a roundabout way, and I don't mean to be. But I really think that Jesus does speak with authority. And so when Socrates preaches it, he's a man preaching it. When Jesus preaches it, he's the Son of God. And so even though it's the same teaching, it's one of those things that I think God has already planted in the culture to allow Jesus' ministry to flourish. So I think it's not that Jesus is stealing, it's that he's baptizing and sanctifying what is there. And I think that's, imagine this, at the end of Matthew, what are we told? Well, let's just turn for a moment to the end of Matthew on page 297. Look what we do here. Chapter 28 there. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came to and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. No question at that point, right? You either believe or you walk away, right? At this point. And here's the really important part. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always to the close of the age. So this is Christianity. Christianity is us going 2 by 2. And who are we encountering? Always the non-Christian. All of Christian history is encountering the non-Christian. That's what Christian history is. And so that means we have to meet the pagan where we find them. And we can't just get rid of everything in paganism, because then we're getting rid of everything of the dignity of the person we're trying to convert. Instead, we have to take the one thing they got right and magnify it, maybe even to absurdity. But we have to magnify it and say, yeah, you guys got this right. Just like Paul at Mars Hill. You guys got this right, this unknown God. You got it right. Good for you. Now let me tell you who that unknown God is. That, to me, that's God the Father laying the seeds for all of this to come about. So and I'm sure you guys have seen this, if you go into a black Christian church, they'll almost always have an image of Jesus as black. It doesn't bother me at all. It's not accurate. But I've walked into German churches where Jesus is blonde and blue-eyed. That's equally inaccurate, right? In some ways, yeah. So, I mean, it's what we do. It's okay to kind of incorporate him into our culture and to make that real. But, if baby Jesus in Austria had looked like a North African, that would have been too foreign for them. So he has to be blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Right? Again, an absurdity, but at the same time, not untrue, in the sense that Jesus represents all men, right? All women, all men and women, right? Overall. Does that make sense? Okay. Jake, you just stretching? Okay, good. So let's finish here. Ava, you wanted to read, right? You had raised your hand a little bit ago?
I just had a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, it was early. I'm here.
Okay, you're fine. Okay, anybody else want to read? Helen did a great job. Frederick, thank you. So let's go back to page 293, and here we have Jesus telling us how to pray.
Beware of practicing your piety before men, in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give alms, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by men. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that again. And in praying, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Pray then like this: Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father also will forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses.
Okay, let's stop there, Frederick. Thank you. So let's just analyze this for a moment. We are told we are not just supposed to have vain repetitions. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have repetitions, right? You can still have repetitions, but they have to be meaningful. Just in the same way that I can't look at a woman with lust in my heart. When I pray, I have to mean it. And so it can be repeated. There's nothing wrong with repetition. It's only wrong if it becomes hollow or empty and the repetition doesn't mean anything. But I'm sure any of you who've ever done, say, Liturgy of the Hours in the Eastern Orthodox Church or among the Anglicans, there's a point where the repetition becomes meditative. And that's a healthy thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I love the way that Jesus puts this. Look at the Lord's Prayer. It's perfect. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Right? We have just in every way declared sovereignty. This is God's sovereignty. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And then what do we see? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's kind of perfect communion between this world and the next world. And then what? This is amazing. Give us our daily bread. You don't have to say please. He's your dad. He has to feed you. That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, right? It's not a supplication. It's not, oh God, please give us this. It's, Dad, give us our bread. Right? And now you need to be grateful for it, of course. You can't be a snot about it. You can't be a brat, but you are his children. And I love that. I love the way Jesus puts this. Think about how intimate that is, right? How very intimate that is. And forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. And we're back to Socrates, and we're back to Jesus a moment ago turning the other cheek. Right? And we are reminded of this over and over again. And I ask us, and this is a complicated question, when we forgive those who have trespassed against us, is that a good work or is that an act of faith? Or is it both? Because we're clearly commanded to do it. But I'm not sure if that is an act of faith or an act of a good work. It seems to me a very complicated mixture of both of those things in some way. Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil. Again, no pleas in any of this. This is what you have the right to demand of your Father. You are being granted sonship or daughtership to God. For if you forgive men, and right now we're out of it, but if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will forgive you also. So that seems pretty critical that we would need to do that. But again, think about the Lord's Prayer. It starts in sovereignty. It then is petition, but it's petition to our Father, not to some random king that we have to pay homage to. We do pay homage to him. We are gracious. We have gratitude towards him, but we have every right to demand our daily bread. And again, that's shocking. And remember what we had talked about earlier in class. When Jesus says, our Father, the word he uses is Abba. And Abba doesn't mean high exalted one. It means daddy. That's incredible, right? And think about all the Jews up to this point. Only the priests can say Yahweh. And Yahweh is not even a name, it's a title. And so now Jesus is telling these Pharisees up on the mountain, by the way, when you talk to God, call him daddy. Right? That's going to be that may be the most shocking thing he has said in all of this because of that intimacy. All right, so let me just finish with this, guys. And I hope, I know, again, we're at a Christian college. I'm presuming the vast majority of you come from a Christian background. But, and I'll say this as a 58-year-old, I think there are times when our Christianity becomes dry because we've known it all of our lives. But then you start reading this stuff. And for me, I've already told you guys this, my favorite book by far is The Lord of the Rings. I love Tolkien. I never get bored. I'm always interested. What is Gandalf a Maya or a Vala? All the things that you can imagine I'm into. Partly because I love the fact that it's so complicated. But when I read this and I hear you guys read to me, and you did a nice job, when I hear this, I am awakened to the fact that Christianity is just as beautifully complicated and mythical and wondrous and fantastic as anything Tolkien created. And of course, Tolkien was a daily Mass Catholic. This was not lost on him. He knew he was doing something religious in what he was creating. So just keep that in mind. At the times that Christianity feels dry, just go back and read it with wonder, and you'll be reawakened again. All right, thank you guys. Have a great fall break. No new readings. When we come back, we'll read together. So forget this class for the next 4 days, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys on Monday. My kids love them, but I grew up on the books, and I'm kind of a purist. So there are things I think they're fantastic war movies. And I think they're fantastic movies about the men. I don't think they're great movies about the hobbits, if that makes sense. What do you think, Christian?
I like them. Every year we have Lord of the Rings marathon where we watch all the extended editions
Fun.
one day. So
That's awesome,
pretty fun.
Christian.
Yeah.
That's great. All right.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. See you, Jake. Hey, Caleb.
Get my email asking about office hours and all.
I don't think I did.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. But yeah, weren't you going to stop by today?
I can stop by today.
Sure, or we can do it next week, whatever works for you.
Yeah, when do you?
I'll be there today from at least 12 to 1,
Okay.
if you want to stop by.
I'll have class then.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well, I could, do you have class at 1?
I have class from 12 to 1, so I don't have class at 1. I could.
Do you want to come over then?
Yeah, I could.
Okay,
stop in.
good. I'll just meet you then. I'll meet you a little after 1.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
thanks,
Thank you.
Caitlin. Thanks. Hey, Isaiah. Oh, no, I just threw that out. Of course he's a Maya. Of course, yes. But no, I was just saying I love those distinctions. Thank you.